Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zha. Today we have a very special guest, a returning guest, in fact, on the Silk and Steel podcast, Mr. Dana, all the way from Shanghai, China. Dana Showtime is he's often been referred to as the godfather of the Chinese hip hop for introducing rap and hip hop to China. But I think you will do a better justice introduce yourself to my audience. So Dana, can you do a brief intro on who you are and how you end up in China?
Sure, my pleasure. Peace and blessings, love and light. This is Dana, aka Showtime, from the almighty Iron Mike, reporting live in the People's Republic of China in beautiful Shanghai, the city of dreams, which has been my home for nearly a quarter of a century, actually over a quarter of a century. I moved to China in 1999. I came over just a young man fresh out of college, an adventurer. I had a lot of passion for hip hop, and I kind of plugged myself into this burgeoning hip hop scene. I'm considered one of the godfathers and pioneer of the hip hop movement. I've had a long journey in China. I've done a lot of things, wore a lot of different hats. But I'm proud to call it my home. And apparently, according to the record, there's no other African American that has lived as continuously in mainland China in the history of the People's Republic of China than me. 26 years. Got a couple good friends that moved to Hong Kong in the early 90s. People were moving there at that time, but no one really has lived in the People's Republic of China for a quarter of a century. And I've had the opportunity to travel far and wide across the country, over 60 cities. And so it's always good to be back on the show. I was here just, after the first lockdown, and I got to introduce myself and talk a little bit about, my story with hip hop. But it's great to catch up. And, finally, we got to meet for the first time. So this is the first interview after our first meeting.
Yeah, I feel like I already know you for a long time, Dana, because we have known each other online and we collaborated on my podcast. So when I finally met you, I felt like I know you already. It was great that you kind of showed us around Shanghai in a way that I would not be able to do without local contact. Because before I go to Shanghai, I always go to the tourist side, which is the Bong and Nanjing Lu, the pedestrian street. So all the people other tourists do when they come to Shanghai. But you actually show me how average Shanghaiers live, and you show me around your neighborhood, your residential compound, and you show me around your favorite walk place in Shanghai. That was great, and so there are many reasons I want to talk to you, and not just the fact that you're quite unique. You have a quite unique experience as a Black man, as a Black Muslim man living in China for pretty much the entire 21st century so far. And so first of all, I want to ask you, what is it like to live as a Black person in China for the last 26 years, and what's it like to live in China in the year 2025?
So, I get asked this question a lot, and I've been on different interviews and I've shared my piece. I have my way of framing it. And I got some pushback the last time I was on a video and I shared my perspective. First and foremost, I'm only going to speak for me and my personal experience. My personal experience as a Black man from Detroit, it's the greatest experience of my life, the greatest life choice and life decision. It's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. I've tasted joy, I've tasted pain, bitterness, and sweet. I've seen it all, highs and lows, but the good far outweigh the bad. And from that lens, it's great. It's incredible. It's a roller coaster ride, and we're still going up. It's still going upward. So I can barely put into words. I think I'm gonna have to do a better job of actually just showing people, because if I talk about it, you're not gonna get it. But if I show you a window into my life and the things that I've experienced, if I do a better job of that, people will have a better understanding. It's you couldn't even make a movie about the life that I live in China. I've never seen anything that could capture what I've experienced traveling this country, the people that I've met, and the journey that I've been on. So it's unbelievably positive, progressive, uplifting, forward moving. I've been humbled. I've learned a lot. I've progressed. I think politically, I've never felt more inspired and empowered. There's something that was really lacking in the United States, actual political power, and it just experiencing what I think is the 22nd century. And I have a good friend from Detroit. We're working on a project, the 22nd century. In the future, we'll get that content out there for people can see. But there have been some movies and documentaries. There's probably 6 or 7 documentaries already out in the market that have followed my life. That's how, and none of those documentaries, they barely touch the tip of the iceberg. So that's like 12 hours of content already out there. Like, what more do I want to show? But there's so much more. Damon Dash, the guy that discovered Jay-Z and Kanye West, he came out over a decade ago, and he has a film, We Went to China. I'm heavily featured in that. There's a documentary, The Story of the Iron Mike. A lot of these things you can find. And then as well as Google and YouTube, you can see a little glimpse into the world that I've been able to experience. But to answer your question, I can't think of a better place on the planet Earth for a Black man from America to be than the People's Republic of China, 10 toes down. So it's been incredible.
Well, on that note, I'm going to ask a question I'm sure on everybody's mind. What is racism like in China? Have you experienced racism?
So this is a very interesting question. And the way that I want to answer it is very delicately. So usually when I do, and I tell the story how many African Americans and Black people in China make the statement that there's no racism in China. I didn't make this up. There are countless people that feel the exact same way, but that belies the reality of everyday experience with random people, one-off experience, various microaggressions. There's definitely levels of discrimination within Chinese society. Certain industries cater towards certain people. There's certain bias. If you look in education, in advertising, two areas where I worked, for years, for decades, that I know really well, you can still find discrimination. It's very in both of these fields. I think one of the reasons it's hard to address like discrimination in many countries, it's invisible, and there are many barriers. First and foremost, it's completely illegal to discriminate, so it's against the law. So you have to know your rights over here. And if you catch any company or business discriminating you on the basis of your racial identity or skin color, best believe me, you have a case, and if you can document it, you can get your due justice. A lot of times in education and advertising, there's all these middlemen. So you have these middlemen agencies that are online, that are recruiting and trying to find people, and they're the ones that do the filtering. And they're the ones that it's really hard to punish. So you'll have someone that'll make an advertisement saying, we want a single white, blonde, European looking teacher, or we need actors, Black male act. They'll get very specific. And so if you're looking for work, you'll see quickly, you can judge by a lot of these middleman agents, some of the bias. And there's always been, I can tell you countless stories. I know so many stories of individual acts where you can say it was a racialized encounter. Unfortunately, I can only count probably 2 or 3 that really ended in tragedy, where someone got killed in a conflict. But the reason I struggle with answering this question, Carl, is because racism has been politicized, and I've noticed the problem now. I've identified the key problem. I've been away for 25 years. There's a lot of things that have changed in the education system, in the university system, and somehow, some way, they've pulled this magic trick on the university kids, and where they basically universalize injustice. So people are going to school and they're learning about imperialism, colonialism, racism. And then suddenly, like a magic wave of hand, they're being pushed to believe that these systems of oppression are universal and that they happen all over the world. And that's how people are easily tricked into being duped into thinking that some of these non-Western countries have engaged in colonialism in anything remotely similar to what the West has. It's a false equivalence. And it's also, I see it being weaponized on people, especially a country like China, because China is a big nation. It's a powerful nation. And it's very easy to say, they're just as bad as we are. They're just as evil and corrupt as we are. We practice racism. They practice racism. And then you fall into the trap of this projection where they're projecting their own injustice on another people. And people are buying it, hook, line, and sinker. And another point that's really critical, a lot of folks don't realize that there is an actual deliberate plan by the United States government. I've seen the reports from the Department of Defense to weaponize the idea that China is a racist state. They want to use this as propaganda to even portray China as an authoritarian, Nazi-like, racist, Han ethnic state that is doing the same thing as white supremacy. So basically, they can undermine confidence. They can use this as a soft power tactic, asymmetric warfare, to get common people to lose trust in China, to fearmonger. So this is a real tactic. And so I'm very careful, because there is no experience in the People's Republic of China of the type of racism that I've experienced in the United States of America. That dread, that fear, that everyday tension and aggression, that hatred, these microaggressions every day. Nothing similar, and there's no history of this kind of global Han supremacy that colonized the rest of the planet and actually brutalized and genocided and try to murder and kill people. And I've never felt threatened for my life here. And so it's really important to say that. So we need to find different language. I don't want to call it racism here, because they don't even use categories of race. But yeah, please.
I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. There's even in a lot of the teachings about colonization and imperialism in Western university, sometimes they teach it from the Western-centric point of view. So that makes the West, the imperial core, the standard, the universal norm. So that means everybody else must follow the same playbook. And this is where the projection comes from. They say, okay, well, China is now growing to be the next power. So they must be doing something very shady. Like if United States has a history with racism, with slavery, with genocide, with colonialism, then China must be doing the same thing. And as you mentioned about the issue of racism, I agree it's completely different in the two countries, because in China, I agree, discrimination exists. And in a lot of ways, there's many forms of discrimination. The urban dwellers, the big city folks, they will discriminate people from the countryside. In job ads, they will have very specific requirement. For something they will say, we want young, pretty woman, 25-year-old, of the height 175 centimeters, right? Very specific, right? Right out there, out of the gate in the job description, like something that would not, fly obviously in the West. But and then there are, I think that, and there are a lot of also you could call racism, but arrive from ignorance. In case of China, a lot of racism cases come from ignorance rather than straight malice. That's my experience. I as a Chinese person who grew up in China, then live in United States, I feel you can say yes, racism exists in both places, but they manifest very differently. In China, it's never kind of that aggressive, in your face, I'm gonna kill you, that type of racism that you might experience in the United States. There's not that kind of like the malice and the aggression. I think it makes a big difference. United States, in many ways, a lot more violent society than China. That's a different topic. But you have what you may call microaggression in China. People will comment on a person's appearance. This happens a lot, and they. And especially when it comes to people of different race, they will straight up say there's no filters in China. For example, I was when I was going. This is not really racism. I'm just talking about example of how Chinese people express themselves. Like when I was going through the custom, the custom lady looking at my passport pictures, because it was a picture of me before COVID. I was still very lean, very cut, and so it looks very different from what I look now. And she would just look at me, and then she looked at my old passport photo when I was, when I was still a little bit chubby, and so she's looking at the two passport photos and look at me. He's like, what happened? You were fat, you got skinny, and you are fat again. It's very direct. Yeah. This is how Chinese people express themselves. But I agree that discrimination does exist in China. There's all different level of discrimination, and as you talk about in especially in field of advertisement, right? Or education. Sometimes they will specify. When they want a foreign English teacher, they really want a white, blonde-looking English teacher, so they can present it they can advertise it to their prospective parents. Look, we got a legitimate white guy teaching English. So even if that guy could be from Romania or Russia and have an English accent, they don't care. They will take that person over, say, somebody who is from the Philippines and speaks fluent American style English, just because the other person look Asian. So they will take a white person, a non-English speaking white person over a colored person who speaks better English. So that does exist. And I agree with you that there's discrimination in China, but it's very, very different from the way it manifests itself in the United States. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just so frustrated by the lens that's being used to look at China. I really think that we have to put that in perspective so that we can have these good faith conversations about what's happening over here. If you don't get that clear in your mind, the hustle that's being played, because when they bring up racism, they don't really want to have a conversation about racism in China. They don't want to have a real intimate conversation about what's happening and how the problem can be solved. They're just using it as a smear tactic. And one of the things that I find so hypocritical about that is they are universalizing the negative. When let's say the United States is backed into a corner for something that they can't get out of, human rights abuses, racism, and their fallback, their default argument is to project, to universalize it, say everyone else does it, but it's always the negative. If you flip that and you talk about the positive things, what about democracy? What about freedom, concepts of freedom, all these things that say are positive? Why can't they be universal? Why can't we see the positive in China? Why don't we ever talk about democracy in a realistic way? Why don't, if you tell me, well, China, I mean, the United States, we believe in justice, freedom, and equality amongst all races, and we've worked hard to improve ourselves. Let's have that conversation about what China believes, what values they have, and how they're working to improve these problems, and how far they've actually come. Let's look at it in a serious way. It's illegal by law in the Constitution to have identity politics. They acknowledge in the preamble of the Constitution the reality of Han ethnic chauvinism, as well as extremist views from minority groups. They acknowledge that both minority-majority relations need to be balanced, and we don't want a nation that caters to the other. And so basically, the way China functions is they do have tremendous efforts for affirmative action. They do care a lot about minority rights. They do care about how they treat other people, and they have laws and procedures that they put into place that I think that we need to talk about and look at more seriously than these these characters that we have. But for me, I don't even, there's so many other issues on the table right now that are so important, so critical, that it's not even a priority issue for me. These identity politics and these social relations between different groups. There's so much more that we need to address. So for me, it's like a breath of fresh air, like that pressure and that strain. It's not like living in America where racism is in your face every day, all day, not only because it exists, but because they don't have the mechanisms that China has, and they're serious about mitigating it. In the United States, if you see in the government, there's a division amongst the government if racism is good or not. Like there's people in government being racist and bigoted, and they feel like this is the way to go. That's not happening in China. They know the party line and how they should handle these issues. And so it's more about enforcement. Back home, like we can't even figure it out. So they're weaponizing racism every day. Here, it's illegal. It's literally illegal to use the media, use culture, use the public spaces to do anything to promote anything other than ethnic harmony. So
that reminds me of a viral video that was circulating a while ago on X. Is this Chinese woman who happened to be dating a white person, actually dating a white man. She was giving a racist confrontation to a black person, and that video went viral. What happened was later, apparently Chinese police paid a visit to that racist Chinese lady, invited her to tea, so to speak, at the police station, and though she had to come out to do a public apology. She put out a public apology video. That just it's very hard to see that happen in U.S. where police visit you for making a racist video on going viral online. But that did happen in China. I mean, the racist person like that piece of crap did exist in China, but but it was very much the police very quickly made her apologize publicly.
Very swiftly. So imagine in the United States, a rapper coming out. Actually, this is happening right now with Kanye, but we'll put that aside. And it's for different reasons. But you're not going to find a rapper, especially if this rapper came out and said something that was anti-black or something crazy, and he's not going to be stigmatized. He's not going to be blacklisted. You can just say whatever the hell you want. Like, imagine the biggest rapper in China. At the peak of his fame, he's already being called out for doing like illegal acts and lewd acts. He's got songs on the radio or that he released and published that talked about like date rape and drugs and all these things that he's being called out for. And then he goes on social media for his apology, and his apology was, well, you know, it's not my fault. I just learned this from Black culture, from Black people. I'm just a kid, you know, I learned this stuff. And you would think, all right, what happens next? Well, in China, what happens is he was already in trouble, but that was the end of his career. He got completely blacklisted and banned, and he hasn't resurfaced till this day. It's been a decade. No music can come out. You're not like people. It was a huge uproar for him trying to pull that fast one, and for him to even believe that he would be able to get away with that justification. But yeah, there's just a different culture in society where things happen that most people wouldn't even fathom took place. I don't think most people know that story about PG-1 and why he's not around and what he did in the backlash. But for being publicly racist, you're not going to get a huge welcome in China.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And that it was a pretty big deal within China, you know, what happened to PG-1. But you know, so outside of China, this kind of Chinese entertainment news it rarely get filtered through. So, you know, but maybe that will change when Chinese soft power start to spread. But for today, you know, China in a way is kind of its own civilization, self-contained. And the outside world has a very little awareness of it. This is why I interview people like you know, who have been living there for a quarter of a century. So you have experienced a lot. You saw the whole growth of Shanghai from, you know, early 2000, late 1990s to what Shanghai is today. So what is it like to living in Shanghai in 2025? You know, having witnessed all that transformation?
Well, I think this is a good segue. I can share some of the photos from the first time that you know we got a chance to meet, and it was such a huge honor to meet you. It's like you said, we've known each other for so long, and I've always been trying to get you to come to Shanghai. I'm like, when you come and get over here, get back, make it to Shanghai, and I just really wanted to you know show you as much as I could about the local life. And so let's see if we could get some of these pictures up on our journey, our first meeting in Shanghai, and what the vibes are like. So I met you at the hotel, and then immediately it was probably about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. The sun was still out, and you know, this is a Sunday evening in Shanghai, a Sunday afternoon, pretty slow day. And so we go to North Shanxi Road. And this is actually, I remember we were walking around. We were trying to figure out, is this the French concession? Where are we? And I always kind of lose my exact bearings. Now I know the border for the French concession and the foreign concession, the foreign settlement, which is the British and the American, is Yan'an Shilu, Yan'an Road. So Yan'an Road.
For my audience who might not be familiar with Shanghai or the Chinese history, you know, after the Opium War, Shanghai was divvied up between the different foreign powers. So each foreign power there will have their own concession in Shanghai, where Chinese laws do not apply. You know, where the laws of that particular foreign nation would apply with their own police enforcing it. So French had their own quarter in Shanghai called the French concession, where, you know, the French law will be enforced by the French police. And British and Americans also have their own piece of Shanghai, but later British and American concession merged together to form what's called international settlement. You know, that would include in Bong, the famous Bong, where all the tourists go visit. And there's actually people don't know this, but there's actually Japanese concession and Russian concession as well. So because different foreign powers carve their own sphere of influence in Shanghai, and so for French concession nowadays is kind of a chic place in Shanghai with all these like very chic stores. People will look at the picture and say, "Where are all the people?" The day we went out, it was super hot in Shanghai. You know, I went in like I went in mid September, right? That's when you took me. It was super hot. People were just trying to stay indoors, and so it's also like a slow. I think it's like a weekend. You know, like it was too early for people to go out to eat yet. So it's that this is probably why the picture you don't see many people here.
Yeah, well, actually, no. When we went out, it was packed. We could because we would have went in. Right. So if you go to the next picture, yeah, hit the next one. So that's kind of what it looked like when we were there, as it was starting to get dark. Basically, this is just in the international settlement north of the French Concession. We're literally like walking in the footsteps of the Western colonial footprint. This is a kind of like an apartheid place where Americans and British people lived. And I used to live in the old town, the old section, the old wall city where all the Chinese were put. But at one point, this was almost all exclusively British and Americans. And it's a pretty large settlement. But go ahead.
There's actually a famous Bruce Lee movie, Fist of Fury. I think it was Fist of Fury. That was about Bruce Lee's character got really furious that when he went to Shanghai and saw the sign in the international settlement outside the park says no Chinese and no dogs allowed. So he got really angry and he jumped up and kicked the sign in half. And so that's kind of the what you were referring to as kind of the apartheid period in China, when the Chinese people were restricted from a certain area of Shanghai, including public parks in the international settlement. And then I know at some point there was some a major Western publication, I forgot what's BBC or Wall Street Journal, that tried to debunk this claim from Bruce Lee movie. They say, so after they did their research, they say, okay, there's actually no sign that says no Chinese and no dog allowed in the park. What the park sign and regulation says is that this place is reserved for European residents and no dogs is allowed in the park, which basically the same thing. Which basically the same thing. So that was their debunking. But anyway, yeah.
So we've come a long way from that, and this party was going on. Actually, it was pretty impressive for a Sunday, because we would have went in there. You probably don't remember because we walked by it. We just took a look, and then I'm going to show you what we saw next. But the place was packed, and basically this is a pizza bar. It's called House of Zup, and they had like a live radio show block party. So the DJ is behind the pizza bar. He's DJing, playing music. People are inside buying pizza, spilling out to the street, and just enjoying Sunday, just chilling. I think they call it the takeover by Bouncy Bounce, and they do these live house parties, house DJ music on the street. So we was chilling. And so if you go to the next picture, because it was crowded, we just started to explore, and we found Shanxi Road, it's also called Seymour Road. Seymour Road, that's the old name during the times that it was part of the international settlement. And it's also home of a corner of the Jewish ghetto and a large Jewish settlement. And these buildings that we're exploring here, we can go to this one was, this is the courtyard that we went into. This is just incredible courtyard. Then on the left, you can see that last building that we were looking at. And this is owned by Sir Robert Hutong. At the time, in the late 1800s, he's the wealthiest man in all of Hong Kong. So yeah, tell us a little bit about him, because it was really cool hanging out in that space. But he's got an incredible story that links to Bruce Lee.
Well, first of all, I have to say that the place that you took me, that courtyard, you can't see from this picture, but there were a lot of baddies hanging out. I wish I had camera with me when I went with you. So that's why next day after you showed me that place, I went to the DJI flagship store in Shanghai and got me a DJI Pocket 3 camera. I wish I had it when I was traveling with you, because there's so many things I saw I wish I had captured on film. So the place is owned by Robert Hutong, and Robert Hutong, he is Eurasian. So he's of both European and Chinese heritage. He himself is a result of the Opium War. So after the British won the Opium War and forced China to cede Hong Kong to Britain, Hong Kong became the first kind of the entry port. A lot of the Western merchant came together to do business with China, and one of them is Robert Ho Tong's father. He is a Dutch businessman with Jewish descent. He came to Hong Kong to basically be a human trafficker. I mean, his whole business is shipping the indentured Chinese servants from southern China, from Guangdong, to Dutch Latin America, which is I think Suriname, and then his whole business, in Cantonese, this is called mai zhu zai, selling the piglet. That's how those indentured servant, Chinese indentured servant felt. They felt they're being sold like piglets, being shipping across the ocean to serve as coolies on plantations. And this is because during that time, in the late half of 19th century, slavery was being banned in South America. So now they suddenly lost, got cut off from the slave labor that was being shipped from South Africa, from Africa. So now the Europeans, they decide to import indentured Chinese servants from Guangdong to replace the African slave that previously worked on plantations. And that was the business of Robert Ho Tong's father. And while he was in Hong Kong, he did like what many Western businessmen at that time did. He had a kid women, and a kid Chinese woman, which is Robert Ho Tong's mother, and he had 4 or 5 children with her. But interestingly, now the interesting, so later this Dutchman who rose to become Dutch consul in Hong Kong, he actually left. He left Hong Kong, left his kid women and his children, and he traveled to United States to marry a real estate tycoon's daughter in San Francisco, and then they all became naturalized British citizen and traveled to live in Britain. So Robert Ho Tong, his mother sent him to those missionary schools because that's the only school that will take these mixed children in, and so he was brought up with both English and Chinese language skills. So it became very useful when he graduated to enter to the workforce. And at that, he first joined the Chinese custom, because at that time, all the Chinese custom were controlled by the British. So after Opium War, all the Chinese custom were controlled by British. So he joined the custom in Canton, today's Guangzhou. After working there for a few years, he decided to join one of the largest trading houses in Hong Kong, that's Jardine Matheson. Jardine Matheson started out as the biggest opium smugglers into China. They started out in opium smuggling. And so Robert Ho Tong quickly rose through the rank as a comprador, because he knows he's fluent in both English and Chinese. And then he got the way he got his job is because his older sister married another comprador who was working in Jardine Matheson. So that got him in the company. Then he got his younger brothers also into the company. And one of his younger brother is none other than Ho Kam Tong, the grandfather of Bruce Lee. So Robert Ho Tong is actually the grand uncle of Bruce Lee. And the funny,
I think I got a
story,
picture.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I got a picture. The next one.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so that's the picture of Bruce Lee and his grandmother and in Shanghai.
No, it's just his grandmother. This is at the place we were at. This is taken right.
Oh, right. This is like Bruce Lee's grandmother at the Seymour Road in Shanghai, Seymour Road, in in the Hotong residence that we visited. So what happened was Robert Hotong, obviously you can tell he's Eurasian, right? He doesn't look Chinese, but his younger brother Ho Kantong, for some odd, unexplained reason, is full Chinese. I mean, like he's not Eurasian. This was never explained in the family. Why, there's out of the four, 5 brothers, there's a middle brother that's fully Chinese. But that's the full Chinese brother is the grandfather of Bruce Lee, and so all Robert Hotong and all his younger brother, they after working in Jardine Matheson for a while, they learned the trade, so they decide to strike out to form their own trading company. At that time, the opium business is already kind of fading, because what happened is after Second Opium War, Britain forced China to legalize opium trade. So when they fully legalized opium trade, that made planting opium also legal inside China. So pretty soon, opiums were growing everywhere in China. So there's no need to import opium from British India anymore. So there's less profit in it. So that's when companies like Jardine Matheson and Robert Hotong, they all got out of the opium business, and that they got into the business of real estate in Shanghai. So because this was a time of the Taiping Rebellion. The Taiping Rebellion spread across much of southern China. The Taiping rebels took all the outskirts of Shanghai. So a lot of the wealthy people in the lower Yangtze deltas all fled to Shanghai, and a lot of war refugees were fleeing into Shanghai. The population of Shanghai double, triple, quadruple, and suddenly all these tycoons who own real estate in Shanghai became immensely rich by being slumlords, and Robert Hotong is one of them. That's why they have those properties in Shanghai, and Bruce Lee's story is another interesting story, but we don't have time to get into. But Bruce Lee actually do also have foreign ancestry, but not from his grandfather Ho Kantong, because Ho Kantong actually kept a mistress, some say a white Russian mistress in Shanghai at the time, and it's through that mistress Ho Kantong had a daughter, Grace Ho, and that was the mother of Bruce Lee. And so later, when Grace Ho was like 18 or something, Ho Kantong hosted a big party at the Robert Hotong residence in Hong Kong, where they invited Cantonese opera performers to put on a Cantonese opera show. And Bruce Lee's father was playing the role of the martial arts actor in the Cantonese opera, and Grace Ho was smitten, and then she eloped with the Cantonese opera actor that was Bruce Lee's father. So Ho Kantong was actually very angry because he's a billionaire. He was a billionaire. His daughter is not supposed to elope with some common actor, but that's what happened. And Grace Lee eloped, and that's how Bruce Lee came about. Let me see if I think I have another picture. This is a picture of Bruce Lee's grandmother. Yeah. Okay. And this is next place we went to. That's a synagogue, right?
Yeah. So after we left there, just on the same block, we just walked over. But it's just, when we were there, I didn't know that Bruce Lee had a connection. I still didn't know the history of that man. But it was just so remarkable how we're just walking through history, and we're just strolling through Shanghai. We're on one block, and there's so many layers. And as you were pointing out, like so many people, because that building just got opened in the past year. That area wasn't open to the public, and you didn't see it in the photos. But next to the building, there's like a 5-story building that has all these really nice boutiques, like a really exquisite coffee shop. They're selling plants. and clothes no one buys, really expensive clothes. And so all these, I guess, TikTok folks and Instagram people, everyone is there taking photos and walking in the footsteps of Bruce Lee, his grandmother, and basically in the footsteps of imperialism. Like a lot of the stuff that we're going through is built up by dope dealers. And to this next place, speaking to that, like this was the what is it, the Ohel Rachel Synagogue.
Yeah, so at that time, the richest people in Shanghai is not actually Robert Hotong. Robert Hotong is the richest man in Hong Kong. But Robert Hotong and his younger brothers were richest men in Hong Kong, which, by the way, really upset the Hong Kong authorities because, you know, these Chinese people are not supposed to be wealthier than the British themselves. So they were kind of upset when Robert Hotong bought a house on the top of Victoria Peak. So and after that, Bruce Lee's grandfather, Ho Kantong, also wanted to buy a house right next to his older brother. So that's when the British governor of Hong Kong panicked, and he put in, that's the Hong Kong legislation, the 1904 Peak Reservation came out to reserve the Victoria Peak for Europeans only, because they got scared all these Chinese are getting wealthy enough to move into what they consider a European neighborhood. And so from 1904 onwards, for a long time until, you know, after World War II, the Victoria Peak was only reserved for the Europeans. And this is all because Bruce Lee's grandfather wanted to buy a house there, but the Hotongs were the richest family in Hong Kong, but they're not the richest family in Shanghai at the time. The richest family in Shanghai are the Sassoons and Kodoris. They're Baghdadi Jews. Yeah, they're Baghdadi Jews who migrated to British India just before the Opium War, and then they started their business smuggling opium from India to China, and later they transitioned again from opium dealing into real estate in Shanghai, becoming slumlords. And so they became the richest people in Shanghai, and this is why, you know, you see a lot of the old style synagogues and stuff that were there. And there was also a large Jewish presence during World War II, because during World War II, like the Chinese consul in Vienna, he would issue visas to any Jewish person who wished to flee Europe to Shanghai. Well, even though at that time, actually, you don't need a visa to go to Shanghai because Shanghai has all this international settlement. But a lot of people don't know about it. so this Chinese consul in Vienna, he would issue any passport, like visa, to any Jewish person who come to his consulate for passes to Shanghai. That enabled something like 30,000 Jewish people who fled to Shanghai during World War II. And so there's a large Jewish ghetto in Shanghai during World War II. This is where you took me next, right?
Yeah, this is the same. This is the aerial view of that. That's the same synagogue. Okay. But if you go a little bit, I believe it's moving more towards the east. You will see the ghetto area and the refugee center that housed the Jewish community at that time.
Yeah.
So we got a little taste of, again, this is like the first 20 minutes of us hanging out. We're going through history all on one block, and then we walk a little bit further up, and it was called Shangkang Li. So Shangkang Li, Shanxi Lu and Kanding Lu. So the cross street, Shangkang. And this is the place where we went, and it had already started to get dark by the time we were there. And this place is a nice little loungy hangout, a lot of kind of like coffee shop bars, it's kind of barista style, canopy, hang out in the under the sun, or just outdoor kind of places.
Again, you couldn't see it from this picture, but when we're there were a lot of baddies. All the places you took me are full of baddies.
Tons of baddies. So there's they got like a home slice pizza, Azul, this Italian restaurants, Bubba's American Barbecue. And if you go to the next one, I took you to the rink, where it's this skating rink bar, restaurant. People are skating and drinking at the same time, which makes no sense, but people are doing it, and they got all these disco.
We saw a mixed couple, like a mixed Chinese and black couple, skating there. A Chinese man and a black ladies were skating there when we were there. I remember that.
Yeah. So this place is like a cool swank, place to chill out. You go to the next one. It gives you. They kind of try to make it like a modern Xintiandi. If you look at the next picture, it's a little. Apparently, it's like a Japanese designer that was behind it. But it was here while we were hanging out that I started to, ask you about your story, right? I wanted to know more about your experience and coming in reverse, because our stories are very similar. I'm the black guy that goes to China. You're the Chinese guy that actually moved to America, to Chicago, and you landed in, you're right next to, next door to Detroit. You're my neighbor. My sister, grew up in Chicago, and you landed in the black community. You landed right in the hood. So I wanted to ask you about, growing up in the hood in China and Chongqing, and then moving to the hood in Chicago. What was that like? Did Chongqing prepare you for Chicago? And how did you deal with the stereotypes in like a all black community? How do they react to the Chinese guy?
Well, first of all, just living in Chongqing in 1980s prepared me nothing for 1990s America. Okay, especially 1990s Chicago, Southside Chicago. I just to clarify, my first half of my childhood, up to when I was 6 years old, I was living with my grandparents in the part of in the residential compound that's attached to Chongqing #1 textile factory. So I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Chongqing. But when it's time for me to go to school, I actually went to live with my dad on the campus of Chongqing University. So it's a very sheltered. Chongqing University is a very sheltered environment. It's not really the hood. But when I moved to Chicago, well, my parents, we live in Bridgeport of Chicago, it's not close to the South Side. So Bridgeport at that time is still a white working class neighborhood right next to Chinatown. So you're getting some infiltration from Chinatown with some Chinese families start moving in. So my elementary school was there's maybe 20% of the kids were Chinese or from Chinese immigrant families. And then but when it's time for me to go to, well, by the way, it's in that neighborhood, the white working class neighborhood of Bridgeport. That's the first time I experiencing racism in America, because when I started high school, because I started 8th grade in United States, and then for freshman year I attended Kingwood Academy, which is in the hood. It's in the south side of Chicago, right next to the University of Chicago campus. And for people who don't know, the University of Chicago campus it's a ghetto within a ghetto. so University of Chicago is surrounded by the South Side ghetto, but my high school, Kingwood Academy, just outside of the campus of University of Chicago, so it's right in the middle of it. So I would, from where we live in Bridgeport, I would take a bus for every day for an hour and sometimes an hour and a half to travel through the entire length of Chicago South Side to go to school. And one day when I was waiting for my bus, this is a Bridgeport in the white working class neighborhood. I still remember this. It was very cold. It's in the winter, it was snowing and very windy. And I was just still shivering in the cold. And this a car of 4 white teenagers, they just drove by and then spat on my face and called me a chink. And that's my first experience with racism in United States. And but when I actually went to the school in Southside in Kenwood Academy, I didn't experience that because people were curious. Like Kenwood Academy is like 90%, 94% Black student body, right? That's where I went to high school. People are very curious because I was this kid from China. So even if they, sometimes they will ask questions, it's more out of curiosity than out of malice, which is what I say about China. China, there might be people consider maybe racism or microaggression, but it's more from point of ignorance mixed with curiosity, that it's not from a point of malice. Like in Kenwood Academy, I was never, there was never people coming here and be like aggressive in your face, like calling me a chink and that kind of stuff. I've never experienced that. And so
that is so powerful. Not to cut you off, but just I want you to continue. But that is such a powerful experience, Carl. And that story, like the average person, they're gonna assume that if you go to the ghetto with the Black folks, that they're gonna treat you bad, they're gonna attack you, they're gonna beat you up and bully you. But you're literally telling me that it was when you went to the suburbs you got spat on, but when you were in the hood in one of the toughest schools in Chicago, people were cool. Like they were curious, but like you didn't have anyone actually verbally assault you. But please continue. I'm sorry. This is no
verbal or physical assault. That's just not my experience. And Kenwood is in a tough place because we had people getting shot in our schoolyard. One time I was getting out of math team practice. I know, very typical. I was a nerd on the math team. So when I was leaving math team practice, I heard some girl say, "Oh, so and so got." I heard a loud bang, and some girl rushing. Also, so and so got shot. So all the people are rushing out to form a huge circle around this one spot in the schoolyard. I wanted to go see too, but then I saw my buses coming, and I know if I miss that bus, I'm gonna have to wait another 20 minutes. So I rushed to the bus. And later, when I came back home, I turned on the TV. They said somebody got shot and died in my school. That's the kind of place it was. But I did not experience, racial attacks or even verbal taunts in high school. So I did attend Kenwood Academy for a year. I lived there. So I spent my freshman year attending there, and then I got tested into IMSA, Illinois Math and Science Academy, which is in Aurora, Illinois, in the middle of the cornfields. It's a whole different experience living in a residential school in the when you're 16 in the middle of the cornfield in Aurora, Illinois. But so overall, my experience with the Black community in America is actually pretty positive. I did not have the same kind of racist attacks that I had in Bridgeport, in the place where my family did live. Because that wasn't the only occasion where I was confronted. There was another time, when I was just walking through the park where I would go to, because the bus stop is on the. I have to cross the park to go to the bus stop to go to school. And one time when I was crossing the park, I was accosted by this a white kid and a Latino kid, and they're just, they're just like being very aggressively confronting me. I'm like, oh, what's up? What's going on? And then they pretend to reach into the pocket to pull a gun. And then I got scared. I was like, oh shit. I turned around and ran. But they didn't have a gun. And then there was some old there's some old grandpa in the neighborhood did yell at them, say like, what did he do to you guys? Why are you guys trying to bully him and stuff? But that's was my experience in the white working class community versus the Black community in Chicago.
So I noticed, like, in a lot of your guest appearances, you do have a lot of good camaraderie with Black hosts. You have a lot of Black guests on your show, and you're on their show, and you still keep that relationship, and there seems to be a connection. What role would you say Black Americans can have in U.S.-China relations, and what advice would you have for Black Americans that want to come to China?
That's a very good question, because I think the reason I do feel a lot of camaraderie and solidarity with a lot of my Black hosts or Black guests on my show is because I think they get it. They understand. United States is a racist society, and a lot of the aggression shown toward China precisely because China is a non-Western, non-white nation that is rising. This is the source of a lot of U.S.-China tension, and a lot of those Black commentators, they gets it. I don't have to explain it to them, because even with some I'm sorry, but this is true. Even with some white folks, they will deny it. They will deny because there's an element of racism. they will even deny U.S. is a racist society. I'm like, look, you live in a completely different world. You just do not have the same experience that we have. So with Black folks, you don't have to explain that. They get it. They know how it is. And I think this is why I think the Black Americans, they can bring a totally different perspective when it comes to U.S. and China relationship. For example, when the question is asked, why do we need to be in an antagonistic relationship with China? That's a question that very few mainstream media is asking nowadays, for the past 8-10 years. The very important question, why do we need to have a hostile relationship with China? And I think that's a question a lot of the Black commentator are asking, why? I think they can bring a completely different perspective into the U.S.-China relationship, I think. And for the people who want to have an interest to come to China, I say come. I mean, I say not just to Black folks, but to any colored folks, any folks that want to come to China, come experience it for yourself, because seeing is believing. Until you are in China, you won't know what it's really about. And let's face it, when you live in the imperial core, a lot of time your perception is being influenced by the corporate propaganda, even by osmosis. Like I noticed, I talk about my own trip to Russia. I thought I was pretty immune to the Western propaganda, but I was still surprised when I traveled to Moscow in the summer. I found it so beautiful and colorful, and everything is so bright. And then I checked myself. I'm like, why did I think that way? Why was I surprised that Moscow could be beautiful and colorful in the summer? And then I realized, because all the images I saw from the Western mainstream media about Moscow, it's always presented as a very gray and depressing place. You don't associate with color and joy and people enjoy their lives. And so, but seeing is believing. Even for the China haters, I say, come visit China. At least understand what you hate about. Right now, you're not hating China as a physical, real place that existed. You are hating China as an idea that only exists in your head, that was planted by the corporate media. Go experience it for yourself. This is my advice, and keep an open mind. Keep an open mind, and keep in mind that, again, U.S. is not China. You don't need to project the conditions inside the United States to China. China is a different civilization, different country. You just gotta treat it, interact with it on its own terms. Those are my thoughts.
I think that is incredible advice. That is the best. That's some of the best advice I heard, because as you're saying it, I'm just reflecting on one is two. Like when I saw your trip to Russia, I had the same experience. I was looking at what you were going through. I was like, man, I didn't imagine Russia to be like this. So I'm seeing it through your eyes. I was actually blown away by just how the streets looked, how people were dressed. You could just see clearly a vision of a very progressive, advanced, clean, safe society. People are super healthy. People are looking good. It just didn't capture, what I thought it would be. And I think this idea about not projecting and bringing your baggage, because when I came, I brought a lot of baggage, and that blinded me for seeing things because I saw it through the lens of America. And this is not an easy thing to do, to unlearn what you've been trained, but only if you have an open mind and you want to learn, you truly want to learn, like, why things are the way they are here. Just because your first impression leads you to a conclusion, it doesn't mean that that's the right conclusion. Sometimes you're seeing something and there's much more complexity to it. And on that note, if I could just show you what it looks like, how we party. Yeah. This is just an early night highball with the homies, the friends, chilling. Again, this might be a Saturday, but people of all walks of life, just having a good vibe. You can go to the next one. And yeah, this is just where we were. This place where we were hanging out. The vibes are good people. The hip hop is good. And then there's another view that they do on their social media. And you ask, like, I don't know if it's coming up. Is it coming up? Oh, there we go.
Oh,
that's the crew.
Slow.
You can see we got Chinese people, we got African Americans, there's Arab people. Everyone's just happy, having a good time over here. It's not a lot of stress and pressure. It's good vibes, people mingling, interacting, and this is the place that I've called home for the past 26 years. And there's so much more that I want to share with you, Carl. I have, we didn't really even get into our trip. We did a lot of cool stuff. Our experience, our Shanghai journey. We had 2 days together, and I do have some footage that I want to share with your followers and your viewers. They need to see it. So I want to line it all up and share some of these stories, these amazing places, and get into, the heart of Shanghai, the tremendous change that has taken place here, and what I see, the direction that Shanghai and China in general is going. So I just want to thank you for having me on the show. It's been a great hour plus. I'm sure we can go all evening. We could go a lot longer, but I'm just happy I got a chance to meet you and kick it with you in person. And I can't wait for you to come back again so we can, do even more. I think we got so much done. We went just what we showed you, just what we were talking about. We walked 2 miles. Actually, we didn't even get to the second place we went to. I guess we'll get into the next video when we had the whole DD adventure, and we saw some other bars, and that was just half of the evening. That doesn't even get into the late night adventure that we had all in one night.
This is the reason. This is the whole time I was with you, I was like kicking myself. Man, I wish I have a camera with me. I could capture this in film. This is why next day I went to the DJI store and got myself a DJI Pocket 3 so I can film everywhere. I mean, like, some of the stuff, it's like straight out of a rap video. You open the door into a smoky den and all these fatties all just lounging around. I was like, wow, where am I? This is great. Yeah.
Yeah, the lifestyle it's unbelievable. The nightlife in Shanghai, it's always exhilarating. So we had a nice, and you're not a hardcore party guy. You're not a drinker or anything like that. So it was interesting to see you in a sober, to see the whole experience and take it all in. And there's a lot of layers to what we saw, and I want to get into that. I want to talk about the layer because there's a lot of history in a lot of venues that we went to, a lot of personal stories, and I think that it will be good for
Okay,
for
we have
viewers.
to do part two. We have to do a part two of this interview where we get to talk about in detail of all those places you took me in Shanghai, and we can talk about the history of those places and the transformation that you saw through your stay in Shanghai. And this has been a great, fascinating conversation. And we'll definitely, I definitely have to bring you back to do the part two. But this is great, Dana. Thank you very much for making the time to share with your peace of mind and how it really is to live in China. I think that people really need to see that and hear that. And thank you very much. We'll do this again.
It's been my honor. I want to say, actually, we got to do a couple part twos. We got to do a part two on Malcolm X, because I still haven't finished telling the full story of Malcolm X in China and why I believe he was assassinated, which I think is linked to his connection with China. That story needs to be explored. I found some new information on that. We still got to we didn't finish our warrior, and I think our warrior episode. Yes. So we got 3 part twos that we have to do. And
it's going to be a series. It's not part two. It's a series. It's going to be Carl and Dana does China, the whole series. All right, guys, you heard it first on the Silk and Steel podcast, and we'll see you catch us next on our next episode. Peace.